This is an extraordinarily important partnership for Canada, and I would like to say more broadly, obviously, for our countries, but also it's appropriate that we're having this discussion here at NATO. Let me just put this in context. This is the largest defense procurement in Canada's history. It was done in record time. It was a decision that originally was going to be taken by the end of this decade. But because of the preparedness, because of the partnership, and because of the urgency of the situation, the threats that we face, it was taken within a year, highly contested, a great submission by our Korean friends, Hanwha Ocean. We made the right decision for Canada. We made the right decision for NATO.
The right decision for Canada and the right decision for NATO. Important and obvious words there, of course, referencing NATO, which is where Mark Carney is today, along with all the other NATO leaders meeting in Turkey. So that's, of course, a step towards, fulfilling Canada's obligation, every NATO member's obligation, right? That 2% commitment that Donald Trump said he wanted to see. Roger Hilton is a former Montrealer working now as a non-resident fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute in Vienna, and he's on the line. Roger, thank you for coming back. So, I'm reading a whole bunch of headlines today calling this the most significant NATO meeting in many, many years. Significant? Why?
Merhaba, Andrew, and Aaron, and Merhaba, Montreal. Great to be with you. This is the most significant NATO summit until the next one coming up, but there is some truthy words to it, because, if I had to reduce what was at stake right now for Canada and the other members, it's making sure that everything stays on track, and that, the American president doesn't leave too upset with his entrance to Ankara at the moment. So a lot to discuss, but as I said, every summit is the most important until the next one.
All right, I'm trying to understand some of the issues here, and I know Donald Trump posted already today before even getting involved in the meetings, right? Talking about, he brought Greenland back up again. He brought up the fact that none of these, NATO allies, when he wanted them to get involved in Iran, were willing to get involved. He actually mocked Britain, I think, at one point, saying that their prime minister had said, well, when it's all over, we'll get involved, to which he said, we don't need you then, we need you now. So there's a lot of animosity, it would seem. Maybe most of it comes from Donald Trump, but does that play into this?
Yeah, look, the EU leaders, Canada, they did their best job to try to prepare it behind the scenes. But obviously, this is completely unpredictable. Donald Trump had so much to deal with over the weekend, but yet again, he was talking about football and the red card or whatnot. But these are just old grievances that are just out of the control of the EU and Canada about getting ready for. Behind the scenes, the chatter and the rumor is, Aaron, that the American officials are actually quite happy with the defense industrial production that Europe has really stepped up on the spending. Of course, there's still some laggards, and I expect the big decisions coming out of the summit is actually a sweet spot where the agreement will be turning commitments into deliverables where these American arms companies will actually be producing in Europe. So again, this is all geared towards Trump, being able home to sell it. And Mark Rutte, I really can't stress enough, has just been an unbelievable Trump whisperer and really sort of placating this idea of Trump trillions in the White House.
Yeah, with respect to that, some people look at Mark Rutte that way and say that, it's just so obvious what he's doing, beyond being a Trump whisperer, just the fact that he seems to, be at the whim of Donald Trump whenever he wants him. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for NATO? Are they playing him or is he playing them?
No, look, I think you have to consider the language that the president responds to, as we saw with the FIFA president, and now more than ever, the job of keeping NATO on the tracks and, all 32 members in line and making sure that there's a substantial American presence in Europe and that the deterrence factor is there is super important. If it works that you need to gloat and you need to really rub his ego, then by all means do it. And of course, I don't think anybody wants to be writing messages to somebody saying, you're my daddy, about all of the spending, but this is what's required to keep things going. And when we have this call in 5 or 10 years from now, and hopefully the alliance is still together, we'll be saying, wow, Rutte really did a great job in an unbelievably tough situation. Okay,
interesting. I would bring up one other thing, which is the situation in Ukraine right now. Very much, it would seem actually getting worse. We read yesterday about a Russian bombing that took 25 lives there. And something I had not really seen, which is perhaps the U.S. involvement in Iran, right, by virtue of all the military equipment being used there, has actually hurt Ukraine because that equipment has not been available to them.
Yeah, I mean, and just again to confirm, that equipment also has already been purchased, and it's not even being given to NATO members. So this lack of stockpile going through is a major issue. As he said, Zelensky has been talking a lot of things, but the number one thing they're looking to secure right now is air defense. I know they've spoken about membership a little bit, but honestly, Aaron, as much as possible, it's probably better if Trump is somewhat disconnected from the whole peace process at the moment. I would challenge the idea that things are going so badly in Ukraine. Putin is just lashing out by throwing ballistic missiles at Ukraine, and all of the drones they're shooting are going down. But for everybody listening, just as a fair weather follower, Ukraine has done an unbelievable job on defense innovation and has really brought the war home to Russia. So in some respects, it is on very even ground in terms of where things are going. They have this massive kill box, which has completely stalled any sort of Russian movement along the front line. And as you said, once rich kids from St. Petersburg and Moscow start getting affected by it, Putin's about to get nervous.
I wonder, though, you mentioned air defense, and I understand that's now the concern, and that those are some of that's some of the military equipment that they're not able to get. Without that, though, what prevents Russia from stepping this up even more?
Well, there is only so much escalation that Russia can engage in. They themselves are having their own industrial issues, right? And there's labor shortages. The financial issues are really heating up. There's like a lot of inflation going on. So it's not as if Russia's just rolling this stuff off of the ground a little bit. Of course, there is some leeway with what Ukraine has. They do have Patriot missile the interceptors, but they have to be very selective to do it. But at the moment, unfortunately, there's not much they can do apart from mitigating it and trying to evacuate the people as much as possible. But as I said, I mean, they've already inflicted as much financial damage as they can cause to Ukraine. So this is purely bravado of Putin, hitting the capital in response to him getting embarrassed in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And something like 44% of the oil refining capacity of Russia, the second largest petrostate, has been suspended due to drones. So, I mean, let's give Ukraine the kudos where it's respected.
Just really quickly, because I don't want to run out of time, I was just kind of running through this whole scenario of Canada, procuring, in this case, submarines from Germany. And the Americans are not happy because we're looking at, getting rid of the Boeing planes that we have and maybe procuring them from someone else in Europe, another supplier. Is this going to hurt us, or is this going to come up, do you think, at NATO?
Well, I mean, the first thing to recognize is that this is great for NATO standardization and sort of deepening partnerships between the EU and Canada. So at the most basic level, Canada has to do what's in its national interest. The second thing, Aaron, before we got cut off, you said there was no American bidder. America themselves have lost all of the deficiencies in terms of shipbuilding and submarine building, and there are just, I think they only have one major shipyard in Pennsylvania that makes this. Mm-hmm. So even if they were to engage with Americans on this, Aaron, I mean, there's no way that this would be delivered where they said the first sub would come by 2034. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this has to be work for both partners in terms of, the procurement. As you said, this is a joint procurement. They're buying into an existing system. There's a supply of labor. There's standardization. Norway being an Arctic partner is another huge advantage. So it makes all senses. What we could discuss on another segment is if the long-term economic benefits are really there, because seeing the package that the South Koreans put together, especially with Algoma Steel, was really something. But Canada's in a privileged position that they were able to get technology transfer and also industrial capacity back home.
Okay, I want to ask one last thing. If you look at this is only a 2-day meeting. What are you hoping comes out of this?
Well, I mean, as you said, the bar is so low, Aaron. We don't want any major blow-ups. I mean, you already mentioned it about Trump bringing up Greenland a little bit. But, I mean, the commitment on defense spending, the capabilities, and just Trump leaving with a smile and no sort of surprise announcements from Hegseth or the Pentagon review of status of forces in Europe, right? I mean, that they're just going to suddenly bring home all of the troops unless they leave Baltic allies in limbo or whatnot. Aaron, one thing I just want to plug as a Montrealer I'm very proud of, there was a Montreal company, Marconi Technologies, that got the first EU Safe Canada program, born and bred in Montreal. So just for all the listeners, Canada, Montreal's making waves in the EU, and I'm really proud of Montreal for being so big on the world stage right now.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Marconi's been around forever. Nice to know that they're involved in this as well. Hey, Roger,
only
it's always
10 mil, but it goes on. But Montreal, merhaba, have a great time, Aaron, and I look forward to talking to you guys again.
Take good care. Roger Hilton, talking about what to expect coming out of NATO. Basically, no news is good news, I think, at the end of all that is what he said, right? As long as we don't upset Trump or he doesn't kind of do something unexpected, then this is considered a win. We'll see.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
And more. All your decade-defining favorites all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.